Sawadika, my name is Bea Kupin. Again, I am in Bangkok, Thailand, covering the Asia Pacific Economic Forum, specifically the APEC Economic Leaders meeting here in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm actually in the International Media Center where the meeting is also actually being held. But because I'm from the Philippines, I'm from Manila, I'm here specifically to cover President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s participation in the APEC and the AELM. So if you've been following the news, this is the second regional summit that President Marcos has participated in. Just a few days ago, we were in Phnom Penh in Cambodia for the ano naman, the Southeast Asian Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit. Kaka-release lang ng chairman statement actually, but we can talk about that on a separate occasion. So here in APEC, actually today lang yung parang kumbaga major event of the economic leaders, the leaders of the economies. Just as quick distinction, kung sa ASEAN, the presidents, the prime ministers, even the Sultan in the case of Brunei, they're referred to as, of course, the heads of state or heads of government. Here, the presidents, the prime ministers, and their counterparts are called the leaders of the leaders of economies, because APEC is a 21 country forum. So the presidents and prime ministers who are here to represent their countries are here representing their economies. So yun lang yung little things to differentiate a forum like the APEC from a summit or a forum such as the ASEAN. So dito naman, bagaman economic issues yung center ng APEC, may side events, side meetings happening here. The biggest, of course, from yesterday was that President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met with his counterpart from China, President Xi Jinping. It's their first meeting as heads of state since Marcos started his term as president. We have a full report on that, but a few things from the meeting. It was neither China nor the Philippines disclosed exactly how long the meeting was, but it happened at around 5:30 p.m. yesterday, Thursday, November 17, 5:30 Thailand time. So sa Pilipinas, 6:30 because Thailand is 1 hour behind Manila in terms of the time. Yung pinag-usapan dyan sa primer siguro, no, President Marcos told Philippine media en route to Phnom Penh so a week ago that he wants to bring up the West Philippine Sea or the dispute in the West Philippine Sea when he does meet with the Chinese counterpart. At that point, hindi pa kino-confirm ng Malacanang that President Marcos will be meeting with Xi Jinping. So, in the releases from the palace, when I say palace, I'm referring to Malacanang Palace of the Philippines. The readings from the palace itself in the hours following the bilateral meeting were kind of scant in their details. Sinabi lang na they talked about regional issues and emphasis was placed on economic discussions. But later on, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs ng China was the first to explicitly say that the two leaders did discuss the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea in our part of the world. Let me read straight from the statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China. On the South China Sea, the two sides must stick to friendly consultation and handle differences and disputes properly. As two developing countries in Asia, China and the Philippines need to keep strategic independence, uphold peace, openness, and inclusiveness, and stay the course of regional cooperation. They should work together to reject unilateralism and acts of bullying, defend fairness and justice, and safeguard peace and stability in the region. On the flip side, from the Philippines, the release came from the Department of Foreign Affairs as opposed to from the palace itself. Although the palace did release things from the bilateral meeting, dalawang releases yun. Pero yung mismong, yung press release that contains more details about the bilateral between President Marcos and President Xi came from the DFA. Now, this is how the Philippine side worded things. On the South China Sea issue, the two leaders agree that maritime issues do not define the totality of Philippines-China relations. President Marcos has said these almost exact words in the past. They also reaffirmed their support for the early conclusion of a code of conduct on the South China Sea to help manage differences in regional tensions. Yung code of conduct na yon, code of conduct on the South China Sea, we actually discussed that when we covered the ASEAN in Phnom Penh. Yung code of conduct na yun, 20 years ago, yung ASEAN bloc, so yung 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and China, so 11 countries, signed the declaration, kumbaga kung saan nag-agree sila na oo, kailangan ng code of conduct on the South China Sea kasi bukod sa Philippines, actually three other countries in the ASEAN bloc have territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea. So 20 years later, nag-celebrate na ng anniversary, plus coincidentally also signed in Phnom Penh. Wala pang code of conduct. President Marcos has called on the immediate conclusion of the drafting of the COC. That's still ongoing. China has also called on the immediate conclusion of the creation of the COC. Yung siguro yung hindi pa siguro yung kumbaga the two countries, ASEAN and China, and the Philippines and China, both agree that the COC needs to be concluded, needs to be finalized soon. But perhaps what the countries, the blocs, have not agreed on yet is what the COC will specifically contain. Yung COC kasi legally binding yun for the ASEAN bloc and for China. So the 11 countries are legally bound to follow what the COC says, as opposed to the declarations just signed 20 years ago. It is not legally binding. So yun lang. So far on the bilateral between Marcos and President Xi Jinping. If you watched my discussion with Sophia yesterday, you might wonder, bakit ang laki ng emphasis on this bilateral with China? Of course, China is, in the words of Philippine officials, it's the superpower closest to the Philippines. Also, the region, Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, is kumbaga the setting of rising competition between between China and the US. This is something that Xi Jinping also acknowledged or highlighted in a written statement for an APEC side event with business leaders. Sinabi niya na yung region ay hindi dapat kumbaga maging setting stage lang ng, let me look for the exact statement from Xi Jinping. Oh, so he said in a written statement for an APEC business summit, he warned against Asia Pacific turning into an arena for big power contest. So that's the backdrop of these negotiations or these discussions. President Marcos has already met with US President Joe Biden months ago, or actually months ago, on the sidelines of the UNGA in New York. To add to that layer, also here in APEC, yung President Xi Jinping is here, President Marcos is here. The US is represented with Vice President Kamala Harris, who is actually set to visit the Philippines naman after her schedule here in Bangkok. And in the Philippines, she is scheduled to head to Palawan, and she would be the highest ranking US official to set foot in Palawan. That's an area close to the contested areas in the West Philippines here, the South China Sea. So that would be an interesting development. And hopefully, maybe tomorrow, when on President Marcos's last day here in Bangkok, we actually get to ask him about the discussion with Xi, and maybe the discussion with President Xi Jinping in the context of US Vice President Kamala Harris's visit to the Philippines. So that's it. Oh, and of course, another important thing to note is that President Marcos will be flying to China in early January 3 to be exact, for a state visit. It will be his first state visit outside of Southeast Asia. Yung first state visit niya was in early September to first Indonesia and then Singapore. Tradition yun ng Philippine presidents that they first visit a Southeast Asian ally for their first state visit. So China will be the first country outside of Southeast Asia wherein the Philippine president gets to do a state visit. So that's also important, and the developments of which we will be closely monitoring. So that's it so far about China, about the bilaterals that President Marcos had with his counterpart from China. Kanina, nagka-retreat na or nag-dialogue na ang mga leaders of economic leaders ng APEC. So presidents, prime ministers already delivered their interventions or their speeches, or kumbaga inihayag na nila yung position ng countries nila with respect to APEC. Konting dagdag din sa APEC, syempre dahil economy nga yung focus ng APEC, isa sa parang yung overarching theme dito is a post-COVID recovery. Again, I've said this before. Some people might scoff at the idea of a post-COVID world, in that COVID is still very much a problem. The pandemic is very much still here. But here, yung discussion, one thing that kept on coming up yesterday during the CEO summit, side event yun ng APEC, na we are no longer living in 2019. So it's been over 4 years, 3 years since the last in-person APEC gathering happened. Very different world on top of the fact that for several years we were shut down, borders were closed, economy suffered because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of geopolitical tensions and issues have arisen in the Asia Pacific, or uh, things that might not be in the Asia Pacific but affect the Asia Pacific. So these are things that are on top, or the top of mind ng mga leaders dito sa APEC. So, yun lang muna about the APEC discussions. Kasi yung mismong summit, kumbaga opening lang normally ang pinapakita sa public or sa media. And then the interventions are released, in the case of the Philippines, it's released by the palace to the media covering President Marcos. Hindi siya kumbaga, and well, on social media as well, so everyone can consume that. Pero kumbaga, hindi by default nilalabas lahat ng interventions ng mga world leaders. So, that is it for APEC and the discussion so far. I want to show you around the media center here in Bangkok. If you're old enough, you might remember that in 2015, the Philippines hosted an APEC summit. So it's very much that energy, the same thing. So it's a huge venue here in, I hope it goes around properly. So I'm at specifically the press working area. I don't have information on how many journalists exactly registered to cover the APEC, but typically thousands registered to be official, to be accredited to cover the APEC and the related meetings. Kasi actually, kung ano lang to, economic leaders week lang to, but sorry, my camera keeps moving. But discussions between high-ranking ministers have been happening for several days now. So, let me walk you around quickly dito sa media center ng APEC. So, this is again the press working area, the working space for the media covering here. Syempre, you have media from all over the region flying into Bangkok specifically to cover the APEC. But aside from the press working area, when you enter the hall, the first thing that greets you actually is exhibition, is an exhibition area. So of course, yung sana hindi lang ako yung makikita, di ba? So yung isa ding motivations perhaps to host the APEC is the host country gets a chance to flex its businesses, its industry. So you have a lot of Thai companies showcasing their craft, showcasing their products. This is a display by a mall chain that's based in Thailand. So I'm just gonna walk around and I'm gonna take you with me. Of course, hindi mawawala ang social media presence or presence ng social media sites dito sa APEC. And this is if I get this to cooperate with me, a TikTok booth for here at the summit. Oh, there we go. Beside the TikTok booth is a Coco booth. If only I can show you there. So, there you go. And people walking around exploring the exhibitions. Actually, we haven't really, well, I haven't really explored the exhibitions yet because we were working on stories and monitoring things. Oh, while I'm walking around here, kwento ko na rin, bukod sa APEC events, President Marcos will be having at least two bilaterals, or at least dalawang bilateral na ang in-announce sa amin na mangyayari today. Sorry. He had a bilateral with Saudi. Wala pa tayong detalye sa nangyari sa meeting na yon. But he's also expected to hold a bilateral meeting with his counterpart from France, Emmanuel Macron. Actually, sinabi na yun ni President Marcos en route to Phnom Penh. Siguro hindi tayo sure kung scheduling thing yun, or baka hindi lang na-clarify ni President mismo. But we'll be meeting in APEC and not ASEAN. That's the end of the exhibition area. Ikot natin ulit. So, yeah. So if you see there, upcycling. So a green economy, environmentalists might dispute certain points of that, but being environmentally sustainable is a huge theme here in Bangkok. And not just in Bangkok in general, but Bangkok specifically because of Bangkok as hosts or the chairman of the APEC summit this year. It's a big thing for them. So, you can even actually, there's a YouTube studio over here. You can see. There you go. Oh! Sana umikot. Ayun. Solar energy display over here. And if you want to take a picture with the Google logo, someone is over here. You can do that here. And that's it. Right. I'm gonna show you. What else? This is a bus. Oh, yeah. Because a lot of the streets leading up to the venue are shut down for security reasons, obviously. So we're shuttered around the bus like this one, so that we can come closer. So kung baga drop off kami sa isang bus stop, and then you take the bus to get to the main venue. It's not a very ng arrival ng mga economic leaders. So it wasn't a very long walk. I promised myself I wouldn't walk you across the entire media center, but that's what I did anyway. Outside here, actually, those are shops na andito talaga, APEC or no APEC. So here, Asai, it won't turn. Asai Beverage Company is over on this side. Let me show you. Behind me. Anyway. And here is a media briefing area. The media briefings are held there ever so often, but they're also smaller media briefing rooms. Officials can reserve the room and hold smaller press conferences for the media that wants to, if they want to brief the media rather. Beverages are available here also. You can get as many as you want. You can stay as caffeinated as you want, to your heart's desire. Although that might not be a good idea to over-caffeinate yourself. It is it's gonna be a long day for most media. But some of the media here, clarify ko lang, kami, because we are primarily here to cover the president's working visit. Perhaps compared to other journalists who have been in Bangkok for longer or who flew into Bangkok earlier. We have spent a longer time here. First day namin dito actually. Kasi kahapon, we covered the CEO summit and other related things connected to President Marcos. I won't show you because people are getting massages, but here is a massage area. So, let me turn that. So, halo. My working area, my desk, my seats, my very fast Wi-Fi. As you can see, I'm walking around connected to the Wi-Fi here in APEC. There are press briefing rooms, shuttles, free coffee, free drinks. Um, it's not just for the journalists and the delegates covering here, but it's also a way for these uh, Thailand businesses and conglomerates, frankly, to highlight their products and showcase them not just to the region, but well, to the region and to the world, right? As corny as that may sound. So I think I'm exhausted. Most of the international media center here in Bangkok for the APEC summit, and I think I'll end there because you might be mag-follow up tayo sa nangyari sa bilateral ni President Marcos earlier, but that's been me so far. We will be in Bangkok again until the 19th, that's tomorrow, covering President Marcos's working visit here. I might see you one more time or a couple more times. Until then, thank you for watching. This has been Bea Kupin, reporting to you from, or talking to you from Bangkok. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching.